show where I offer you judgment-free advice on how to raise value-driven children in a way that's right for your family using the most current scientific research out there. I'm your host, Dr. Deanna Marie Mason. I'm a certified pediatric nurse practitioner, published author, and expert in child development. I'm also the mom of two fabulous adolescents, so I know firsthand how much misinformation is out there, and that's why I'm here. So grab a cup of coffee or tea and settle in. This is a safe space where you can ask questions and get real, honest answers about how to raise kids in a way that works for you. On today's episode, let's take a look at the data and research being conducted on when solid foods should be introduced to infants, as well as how and when foods are introduced can influence food allergy development. The information we'll be covering today is sourced mainly from the American Academy of Pediatrics, as well as the Centers for Disease Control. Information again. Let's start with the recommendations from the AAP and CDC. All major pediatric health organizations recommend solid foods for infants be introduced around 6 months of age. Prior to 6 months, breast milk or formula are sufficient for infant growth and development. However, we know that many parents desire to introduce solid foods earlier because they believe that their baby is interested in solid foods, hungry for more than breast milk or formula, or to help their baby sleep through the night sooner. All of these desires sound reasonable at first glance, but there's more to infant nutrition than what meets the eye, so let's take a look at this topic a bit more closely. When babies are born, their gut is sterile. They don't yet have bacterial colonization in their gut to help with breaking down food, vitamin production, or gas production to propel the stool through the gut. But as our babies drink breast milk or formula, the gut slowly colonizes with healthy bacteria to help with digestion and vitamin production. These bacteria are essential for the creation of certain vitamins, such as vitamin K. In fact, your baby has to get a shot of vitamin K before they leave the hospital because their gut yet can't produce it. And that vitamin K is essential for blood clot formation. Additionally, those bacteria break down some of the components of food so the body can use it. And of course, the colonization of the gut can create gassiness. And that gassiness is useful to help propel the baby's poo through the large intestine and out of the body. Now, some of our little kiddos have mild discomfort from this gas that they pass easily, while other babies feel it more severely and actually experience colic. Luckily, for both sets of babies, a little gastric massage can help reduce this discomfort and help propel their bowel movements more easily from the body. If you want to learn how to do this type of gastric massage, please don't hesitate to check out my video course on newborn care that's available immediately on my website, proactiveparenting.com. In that newborn care video series, I have a special section on soothing, and in that I go step by step and in what order and how to do it so you can watch it and actually copy it to relieve that gas and pressure. Now, getting back to infant digestion. Breast milk and formula are easily digested foods that help this natural process of bacterial colonization and gas formation to occur. In fact, breast milk is the easiest food for our babies to digest. First, right after birth, the breasts release something called colostrum, which is a protein powerhouse that provides concentrated energy and is super easy for our baby to digest. It literally opens up the digestive canal and helps propel and expel that meconium or black tarry stool that's sitting in our baby's intestine from swallowing amniotic fluid. And infant formulas, if your baby isn't breastfeeding, are especially formulated to have small molecules that are easy on your baby's gut to break down. So whether an infant is receiving mother's milk or formula, the gut isn't stressed. But when we introduce solid foods before the gut is appropriately colonized and ready to process more complex foods, we can actually create increased gassiness, constipation, and discomfort in our baby. When the gut is fully colonized, depends on our baby's body, the composition of the breast milk or formula they're eating, and just simply time. We cannot say for sure when each and every baby is fully ready for solid foods. But we do know that statistically, it happens around 6 months of age. So for the grand majority of infants, their guts will be immature for solid or more complex foods prior to 6 months. Could there be exceptions? Sure, of course. But for safety's sake and their comfort, it's best to wait until about 6 months of age before introducing solid foods. If this is the case, then why are parents interested in introducing solid foods earlier than 6 months? I think a lot of interest has to do with misinterpreting what their babies are doing and thinking that their babies want to eat solid foods. It might be a good idea to look at how this happens. Babies will start to become interested in what their parents are doing, including eating, around 4 months of age. This happens because developmentally, our baby's eyesight is better, they're more social, and they're awake for more time during the day. So it's only natural that they start paying attention to what's going on around them. However, it's important that we as parents don't mistake this natural interest in their surroundings as a petition for food. Instead, it's better to understand this natural change in development and support it without putting their little gut at risk. So how do we do this? I think it's a good idea to start young infants in participating with the family meal or meal times. Breastfeed or formula feed just before everyone sits down to the family meal to make sure they aren't hungry. Then have them sit with the family at the table in a high chair to explore the sights, sounds, and smells of mealtime. Of course, they're going to be looking and reaching for everything because that's what babies do at this age, whether they're at the table or on the floor with toys. But remember, they aren't asking for food. They're asking to touch and explore what their eyes are seeing. So we can give them a plastic spoon to hold and bring to their mouth. We can smile and talk to them. We can place a plastic plate in front of them that they can explore. All they want to do is to be part of the action and connect with everyone else at the table. By 6 months, our infants have the motor skills or body control for solid foods in addition to their guts being colonized and ready for more complex foods. Babies who are 6 months old are able to sit up, hold their head up, and control their mouth and tongue movements to effectively move food from the front of their mouth to the back of their mouth for swallowing. This helps avoid the risk of choking. Additionally, babies at 6 months fully understand that their hands are under their own control and can begin to practice the complicated coordination of picking up food from a tray and transferring it to their mouth. They love to have control over feeding themselves and take great pride when food actually reaches their mouth. Of course, it's a messy affair, but their joyful faces make it totally worth it. So, waiting until our babies have that full motor control or coordination of their body is really an important safety task of making sure our baby's ready for solid foods. Lastly, no research has confirmed that feeding infants solid foods prior to 6 months helps a baby, quote, sleep through the night. A study that came out about 2 years ago shows that babies who were fed solid foods prior to 6 months of age, normally parents started at 4, slept approximately 20 minutes longer than infants who were exclusively fed breast milk or formula. This small improvement is a change, but nothing that would change a family's nighttime baby routine. Even with the positive findings of sleeping an extra 20 minutes, this study found that infants who were fed solid foods before 6 months were more constipated. This may have been related to a lack of sufficient bacterial colonization and gas production to move the solid foods through the gut, but the researchers were not investigating infant constipation, so they couldn't come to a conclusion about the reason. That said, sleeping through the night is a learned behavior. To get our babies to sleep for long stretches, they have to learn to practice self-soothing to stay asleep. Filling their belly with food won't necessarily increase nighttime sleep, and at best, it will only add an extra 20 minutes. But it may cause constipation, and that could also affect the quality of their sleep. So it really seems like a toss-up. On a slightly different but related topic, we know that childhood obesity has increased fivefold since the 1970s. And some researchers were investigating to see if introducing solid foods before 6 months had an influence on later obesity in childhood. And luckily, the good news is that research shows that introducing solid foods prior to 6 months has no link to increased childhood obesity. So while we talk about delaying food introduction until 6 months, if you have already introduced food at 4 months, or you're thinking about it, just know that if that happens, it's not going to truly affect any of your child's risk for childhood obesity. That's actually related to other things, not when solid foods are introduced. So just to kind of recap here, I just want to say that all major pediatric groups, including the AAP and the European Pediatric Association, as well as the CDC, continue to recommend exclusive breastfeeding or formula feeding until 6 months of age. We know that at that time, the baby's gut is ready to digest more complex foods and expel the more complex nature of solid foods, as well as they are developmentally ready with sufficient motor skills to make eating safe. Now, this information hasn't changed since the 1990s and continues to be supported in the scientific literature. However, new information is being published about food introduction and food allergies. A new study that came out of Northwestern University's Center for Food, Allergy, and Asthma took a look at children with peanut and milk allergies and when they were first introduced to those foods. They actually did a retrospective study. So they included people or children with these allergies in the study, and then they asked their parents to recall when food had been introduced. And the results showed that children who were exposed to these foods earlier had less allergic reactions to them. It appears that when our kiddos' bodies are introduced to potentially allergic foods early, say at 6 months of age, they have less risk of developing an allergy to that food than if they were introduced to that food later, say around 11 months. Breastfed babies, interestingly, can be introduced to a wide variety of foods through their mother's milk. Moms who are breastfeeding can eat foods that tend to be allergy causing, and their babies will get trace amounts of that food in the breast milk. This is a very easy and gentle way to introduce babies to a variety of foods prior to 6 months when solid foods should be introduced. Now, while previous recommendations were based on avoidance or delaying the introduction of allergy-provoking foods, this new data is showing that early introduction may actually be protective against the development of allergies. Of course, more research needs to be conducted, but it appears that the guidelines for peanut introduction will be modified as more information becomes available. As always, if your family has a history of food allergies, especially if they're severe, it's wise to seek the guidance of an allergy specialist to know how to best proceed in your family. However, for families without histories of food allergies, talking with your primary care provider will help you know when to offer peanuts, eggs, and milk to your little one. Regardless of what the final recommendations are on this topic, working purposefully to reduce food allergies in children is good for the health and well-being, as well as quality of life of our kiddos. Another interesting study that came out recently was published by the American Medical Association's open access journal called JAMA Network Open. In this study, researchers looked at how long pediatric care providers were recommending to wait between the introduction of new foods in comparison to the AAP and CDC's recommendations on this topic. Previous recommendations from the American Academy of Pediatrics advised waiting 3 to 5 days before introducing a new food. So if we followed this guideline, we would introduce a banana to our baby today, and then we would have to wait 3 to 5 days before introducing pears. If parents strictly followed this recommendation, a baby would only be introduced to between 36 and 61 foods in the first year of life if solid foods were started at 6 months. The reasoning behind this recommendation was to allow sufficient time between new foods so that if any allergy or reaction occurred, it would be seen and the likely culprit identified. It was seen as a safe thing to do. However, in today's modern family, we eat a diverse diet with many types of foods. Plus, as we just talked about, introducing foods earlier may actually help decrease the likelihood of food allergies. So waiting 3 to 5 days between new foods may actually be more risky than what was previously thought. So when researchers surveyed doctors, resident physicians, and nurse practitioners who cared for babies, they found that they were giving different recommendations from what the American Academy of Pediatrics said. Overall, they found that about 40% were following the AAP's recommendations for 3 or more days between new foods. About 20% were recommending a 2-day wait, and just under 30% were recommending a wait of just 1 day. The researchers also found that these providers were giving different advice on when to introduce solid foods. So in the end, there seems to be a disagreement between the recommendations and what providers are recommending to families. Further research will be needed to fully understand the prudent time needed to wait between the introduction of new foods, as well as the importance of early introduction of potentially allergic foods. There seems to be a need to look at these issues more closely so that clear, research-based recommendations can emerge. In the meantime, we as parents can support healthy growth and development of our babies through good nutrition that starts in infancy. If we're able to recognize infant nutritional needs, not confuse natural development around the age of 4 months as a sign of hunger, and make sure our babies have mastered the necessary motor and coordination skills prior to introducing solid foods, will make the experience healthy and happy for both baby and parents. This topic always sparks a lot of interest and opinions because food is a really personal issue in families. Please feel free to share your ideas or experiences. And since this is such a big issue, it comes around quite often as researchers are always looking into ways to make sure everyone is eating a healthy diet. So if this didn't quite get at what you wanted to hear about, don't hesitate to reach out and let me know what you do want to know about. That said, we'll be talking about this topic more in the future because there's so much more to explore. Please don't hesitate to leave a comment or question. You can email me at deanna@proactiveparenting.com. And if you want to find out more about me and what I do, please visit my website, www.proactiveparenting.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Insta by searching for my name, Deanna Marie Mason, where you can connect with other parents just like you. Finally, if you'd like to purchase any of my books or my online courses, again, you can do that on my webpage. That's www.proactiveparenting.com. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you found this episode useful and interesting. If you did, please leave a comment or review and tell a friend so they can become a proactive parent too. Well, I'll close here. This is Dr. Deanna Marie Mason signing off for now. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Until then, take care and be well. Bye.